What we do here is go back, 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 back.
Good morning, guys. How's everybody doing this morning? Well, so yesterday's video was entitled BTD TBD. So buy the dip to be determined. Once again, technically we were correct. Not even that sellers were inefficient this time. Buyers have been pretty inefficient yesterday, but we as you can see here, we rebounded all right. So, you know, this is continuing from the drop pre-market. This is yesterday's session here, and then pretty much right after futures opened back to up. Yesterday, after yesterday's close, right as futures opened up, we ticked down a bit, and then from there we just pushed up. We were able to hold up above VWAP here pretty much most of the evening, and then early this morning about 3 a.m. we started to get the dip. So pre-market, once pre-market started opening up for most brokerages, we started to dip, and then you can see they were they're now fighting and recapturing this level on this VWAP. So this will be important today, I think. This included with our levels that we have been historically watching for months. This VWAP is going to be very, very important this morning as well. So that is something we'll definitely be keeping an eye on as far as the overall market goes. Because of how the NASDAQ moved yesterday, we always watch it on our futures map. but I'll probably be bringing it up more than usual this morning. Let's go ahead and take a look at our futures map here real quick. So you can see financials yesterday were bidding up decently, and then they kind of sold off a couple hours into the session, but then they were able to regain from those losses, so they are just under 30 bucks. So we're at 29.77, bidding down a little bit here at 29.86. I really want to see this get back over 30. As for oil, they were able to keep above 50. They never dipped below 50. Our low yesterday was 50.45. What I'd like to see from oil is push up and get into that 52 range again. Gold has been selling off a bit from its highs yesterday morning. Well, yeah, yesterday pre-market, way pre-market of 60.91.70. Definitely be keeping an eye on 10 years and bonds. As Snorkel posted and I pointed out, I was saying how that was probably the most underrated message of any user in the Discord yesterday, is that this is exactly why I bring this up so much and I keep pounding it into everyone's head, is exactly what Snorkel saw and what he noticed, that the move was told in here yesterday before anywhere. And that's what I'm saying is most indicators you guys use, you can name anything, MACD, RSI, somewhat Celts, anything that pretty much is a technical indicator is a lagging indicator, as they say. Using this kind of technique with the VVIX, the VIX, gold, 10 years, and bonds, this can technically usually 9 out of 10 times be a leading indicator, because it's kind of giving you a front run on the action as we see it. So this morning the NASDAQ is up 72 handles right now, so we're up just about 0.81. ES is up about 15, so just under that at about 0.47. So we're up just about 0.5% this morning overall. So decent morning, as far, pretty normal morning. But after that nasty plummet, coming back pretty good. Let's go ahead and take a look at our FANG stocks, and then we'll get into some earnings stuff. There was a lot of earnings this morning. There's just a few that are in the description that I'll talk about that I think you can watch, and then a couple things from Darth's watch list last night and what he was just talking about. Discord we'll be watching as well. So Facebook closed yesterday at 272. We're bidding up nice here at 202.55.64. Apple closed at 298.18. We're back over the 300 mark here, sitting at 301.70.75 this morning. Amazon dipped below 2,000 yesterday, and then very, very nice bullish push up here and close. So we are sitting around 2027 about right now. Netflix closed at 368.70. Nice and strong once again. Just about the strongest one this morning out of the FANG stocks pre-market, just like it was yesterday. Hit a high at 373.07. We're just sitting below that at 371.71. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on Netflix. Google closed yesterday at 1419.86. We are sitting up nice and strong here at 1432.34. And Microsoft up at 173.95, 174, and it was down at 170.89 when we closed. So we're already up about $4 on Microsoft. So Microsoft and Netflix looking pretty strong as far as the FANG stocks go. We will look more at our some of the Momo trades and some stuff like Tesla and Boeing. We'll look at Activision, Nvidia. Activision was looking really good yesterday, and AMD as well. I expect all of those after such a nasty little plunge yesterday. I expect to at least see some bounces from that, if not some nice bullish movement today. Yeah, so again, overall in the market, and we'll watch some of the levels in the NASDAQ. This is going to be key this morning. Lots of news obviously coming out about Italy, lots of news coming out about the virus that ties in with Italy, because they're kind of basically what happened is that we all knew what was going on with the virus, right? But like I had kept saying over and over and over, day after day after day, the moment they started to find these numbers increasing outside of China, it was like they basically could have came out and just kept saying China was just getting worse and worse and worse. What happened is the moment that they decided that we started seeing more cases outside, and more deaths more than anything. That's why when South Korea started reporting their numbers, then Iran, then Italy, it was just that was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So buyers are holding up decently here, but I mean, if you see yesterday, our low was 32.1375. We're really not that high up off of that. We're also not that high up off of, or that far off of all-time highs. So we're kind of sitting in no man's land, so to speak. I do think that the bulls will try to capture this out of the gate. We're playing off the same levels we've been playing off, and the ATG is posted. We have them. If you go to in our Discord, go to the ES levels, ES chart page. There is a nice little script to follow. I would highly recommend copying that or pasting it and putting it into your charts. Is go in and actually physically mark out those lines for yourself. Make sure that you are trying to memorize these as best you can, because it's going to come into play over and over and over. As far as earnings go, the big one that I want to be watching this morning was Home Depot. They posted earnings. It was a pretty mixed bag with somewhat of a grim outlook, but it was kind of that we kind of expected that outlook to be bad because of what's going on. But they are up pretty strong here this morning. Let's actually take a look real quick at Home Depot. We'll look at a couple other ones before the bell here, and then we'll see how the rest of them. There was a lot of earnings, so you can see here, decent, day moving around yesterday. It was hard for this thing to get any traction with the overall market yesterday, but then you can see here pre-market, nice big spike up off earnings, hitting a high of 247.80. We are sitting at just about 246.70, 247.05 is on the bid ask. So looking pretty strong here. I'd be watching this out of the gate to see if we get a fade play or if this thing continues to take off. I would not buy something immediately out of the gate, as premium is going to be jumping all over, but it is going to sink a lot from yesterday from pre-earnings. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I'll be talking about it a bit this morning as we get here into open just in a few minutes. The other one I wanted to watch was SHAK. I think Spartacus was in this long. I'm not sure, though. They posted pretty negative earnings, and as you can see after the market, they just dumped, and they're somewhat on just fading off from that. They are sitting right now at 62.60, 62.69. I would definitely be watching this for a possible bounce and then fade. If this thing can bounce up, I would be really interested in playing it short after these nasty little earnings. So what I'll be looking for SHAK is on here on the 4 hour. You can see that middle Celt. If this thing pushes up anywhere into here, I'd want to play this because this. It's going to open up below the lower Celt. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to say that. I hope I didn't confuse you. Yeah, so it's going to open up below here, but what I'd like to see is a retest of this lower Celt. If it breaks this, then it has a chance to run. What I'm looking for is a retest of this Celt, and then to find resistance here, and then fade back off. So I'll be watching that out of the gate to see if I can get a short position. Again, that's SHAK. It's ticker SHAK. If you haven't played that one, we've been playing it for a while now. Again, I'm going to look for this to open below the lower Celt on the 4 hour. I want to see that push up, retest it, resist on that, and then fade off. That would be an awesome move. And same on the daily. You can see the daily lower Celt is 68.15. So we're going to open up just below there at 62. If this thing pushes up into this lower Celt on 4 hour or the daily, then I'm going to want to get short for sure. That's what we talk about, letting the trade come to you guys. That's what that means, is don't go chasing it off just out of the gate because you think it's going to go short. You're going to get a much better entry and a much better price and a profit if you just wait and see what it does. And especially in this case, if it tries to push back up and finds resistance, then you're going to have an amazing entry, and that could be a nice fade play. Obviously, you could try to play that VWAP as well, but it's going to be a little bit tricky there. So what else did I have? So in some other news, and earnings technically this will be a good segue, is HPQ. They beat expectations, but fending off the takeover from the merger with Xerox that I've been talking about for the last couple months. That will definitely come into play. I think that'll be something just to keep an eye on for a long-term play, not necessarily something that we want to play just out of the gate here, but that'll be something to keep an eye on as far as the news goes. And baby brother of Tesla, NIO, in the news after securing some, quite a bit of funding. I didn't have the exact number. It is on there somewhere. But they grabbed a nice upgrade. So NIO might make a nice little push up, continue from their pre-market gains here. We are going to open here in just about 30 seconds, or from when you get this, about 20 seconds. So I really will be watching the internals this morning. Breadth was just super negative all day yesterday, and the ticks were pretty harsh down. Ad decline never basically got over, I think the high yesterday was right when we opened at negative 1933. but then after that it was below like the 2000 mark all day long. So super negative. So it's going to be interesting to see where this opens up here in just a second. Very curious. Remember, guys, continue to play guarded here. Watch your levels. Yeah, and let's see. Have a good day. Let's see how it goes. So nice and strong ticks coming out of the gate. Nice and good. Opened up on the ad decline at 1159. ADS PD opened up at 340. Breadth is somewhat positive so far. The ticks are looking decent. So yeah, I expect this to be fought a bit here, but then I could see us making a nice move up here. If you're getting long, I would wait for some down ticks or possible change in this in these candlesticks. But we're getting a nice push up here out of the gate, guys. Oh, that's right. MA, the CEO, stepping down. Thanks, Jacob, for posting that. I totally missed that. Yeah, I saw it, but I missed to go over it. Some of the other names Darth's watching is TEVA, Teva, and SFIX for longs. And then downside in take two, which is TTWO and ADSK, Autodesk. We'll take a look at those here later this morning. We are continuing to push up on the ad decline. Breadth looking decent. Ticks looking nice. So far still looking decently bullish here. I do expect this to find some resistance and fight up, especially up at some of these levels that we've had marked for a while. So be careful here, guys. And all the indexes are in the green this morning of note. That's of note as well. Teva over upper Celt over trend line. It's that trade that Darth went over last night. So ad decline coming in, bread coming in, but tick still looking decent. Price action showing pushing those negative candles down. So that's what I'm talking about when you want to watch for this possible change here. Wow, these spreads all over are huge and expensive this morning. This is interesting on both sides. Huh. Wait a second here. Oh yeah, and I'll go over some stuff. So when we go over some stuff about hedging later today, I do want to talk about a few things going on in the world because I think this will tie into it. Some of the stuff with with Trump and the election and all that. We'll go more into that with Bernie Sanders, some of the statements that were made last night and yesterday, and then some of the stuff that Trump was talking about in India this morning. So I'll go over that later. Man, that's crazy. GE cut 78,000 workers last year. That's insane. Nice. Willie making some Tesla paper trades. That's good to see. That's good work, though. So ad decline line continuing to pull in a bit here. It looks so funny from yesterday, negative. This is again why I like the area maps for these for ad decline stuff, because you can really see the contrast, especially from yesterday into today. It's pretty funny. So yeah, getting some pretty negative price action, but internals really, my levels are 600, so we're just about there. So once we come in on that inside 600, that's where I start to get a little bit sketched out, and the same for negative 600. So sellers are really trying to take control of the ball here, and bulls are just letting it slip out. So this is just definitely very interesting. And we do have, that is crazy. We have a $50 expected move by tomorrow in the SPX. That's crazy. I like it though because we're getting back some volatility, we're getting back some range. That's awesome. Nice, Darth killing that Teva trade this morning. And okay, let's see here. Wowzers. Let's take a look around the market. I have like this voice changer thing. I need to put that on there, especially for the afternoon when I'm doing like news. I can make myself sound like Barry White and stuff. It's pretty funny. I'll show you guys in a few. It's actually pretty awesome. So XLF, the financials are just slightly in the red this morning. Here, oil pulling down a little bit, and also down 0.29. The VVIX is also just slightly in the red. And the VIX is down about 7%, which, I mean, after that huge push up yesterday, that's pretty expected, right? Gold actually pushing up here again. It's sitting about 1653.20. The NASDAQ just coming off of its highs here, but it's still up 56 handles or 0.62. And ES is down just up about 0.25. So bit of a divergence a little bit going on with the NASDAQ and the ES. So that's kind of what I wanted to be pointing out this morning and keep talking about. As far as the fangs go, mostly all in the green. They are all in the green. So Facebook is up just under 1% at 0.8. Apple about 0.8. Amazon 0.67. Netflix up 1.18% already. Google up 0.65. And Microsoft 1.41. So just like we were saying pre-market, Netflix and Microsoft kind of leading the charge here right now. Really going to need to see financials and the rest of these names push up as well if we're going to see anything happen in the market on the bullish side here. Boeing up slightly, $1.30 here at $319.20. Roku up 1.4% after that low yesterday, down all the way down to 108.05. It's going to have a lot of resistance here on that lower Celt. Needs to break that, and then I would shoot for a price target today about 124 or 125. Activision so far holding up on that lower Celt, but you can see it dipped right below there, but they really need to hold on to this, especially with that 30 MA there. That's going to end up being, decent support. If not, it'll become pretty strong resistance. Shopify up about 1.6, Nvidia up about 0.5%, and Tesla looking nice and strong once again, up about 1.8%. The China stocks, BABA sitting up about 1.58, 159. Bidu up 1.24. AMD looking nice and strong here, but coming off of its bid up already down, but it's up 2.3%. But the price action not looking too great so far. Qualcomm is up about 0.12, but really needs to get up to that lower Celt today and try to push up on the 4-hour here. Disney up just slightly, about 0.39, and McDonald's up already over 1.3%. And you can see there in the lower right corner, McDonald's on the 4-hour looking decently strong, and especially that it's pushing up over the resistance of that 30 MA, the middle Celt, and the 14 MA. So looking strong so far, especially if it can hold that as support this morning. So ticks looking decent, the breadth looking decent, and the ad decline is still holding up above the zero line, but it's below my 600. So it's at 474, and this is where things can get really between 600 and negative 600. It's just gonna be absolute chop fest. So the bulls really need to get control and push this back up, which you can see they're already matching those candles on the 5-minute here. Yeah, Netflix, Activision looking like the pretty strong. Microsoft looking decent also. McDonald's holding up nice and strong. Nice, Jacob. Nice. For those that are listening or whatever, Jacob's talking about he just sold one Netflix call, 30 EMA on the 4 hour. I like that. Yeah, just like I said, guys, between positive 600 and negative 600, we're always going to be choppy. It's almost guaranteed. Even when this looks like the price action is going to push up, you can all guarantee it with these internals. That's why I watch these internals so much. This is so important to cut out the rest of the noise. You cut it out. You honestly could turn off everything, literally everything. Discord, YouTube, all the news, everything, all the noise, get rid of it. And if you just watch these, you could be a very successful trader after a while once you start to kind of harness those. And those included with support and resistance levels and price levels, yeah, it'd be unstoppable. That's essentially 90% of what I do. Obviously, I also trade off of, I use MACD, I use RSI, I use ATR. You know, I use whatever I can. You know, whatever tools at my fingertips, I'm going to use it. Man, the choppiness is just absolutely absurd here. So ad decline coming in pretty bad here, all the way down to 276, 269. Yeah, definitely going to be keeping an eye on that. As far as the ADS-PD, the ad decline for the S&Ps alone, it's already cleared down to, what is it, 22. Yeah, so coming in pretty strong. Well, coming in weak, I guess I should say. I shouldn't say that the other way. Sorry. Yeah, so now you can kind of see why I like to use the area chart for this. A lot of times when it's just up or just down, it doesn't look like, it's like, why would it matter? But this is why I like to see it, because you can really see, the difference just in one day. And if I really back up, you can really see it. I just think it's a lot better. It's just quicker. It's not that it's better, it's just quicker. It looks so funny. That's so weird. Yeah, super choppy, just like we were kind of anticipating. It's what's going to happen, especially, like, I don't know if you guys realized what Jacob was talking about, but we're back in one of the boxes. We're back in what I call box 2. So it's a volatility box. We basically are going to bounce from top to bottom to bottom to top to top to bottom, unless they can break out or it breaks. So it's when we're inside these boxes, it's very, very dangerous trading. That's why we're also talking about reducing size. In here, don't just throw everything you have at trades. You shouldn't anyway, but you know what I'm saying is, like, it's time to play guarded. Yes, keep playing, make some profits, but back off a little bit. You know, take a breather. This will pass. Might as well just make nice little base hits while we can, and then when the time is ready, when we move out of this, then we go back. You know, then you can swing a little bit bigger. But for right now, might as well live to trade another day. I'm essentially, what I've been talking about, what ATG's been talking about, is that, yes, we've had a few, like, in the right place at the right time, but we're basically trying to build up and save for the big turn. That's when we're going to be going all in, and you guys will hear us, because you'll be here if you're here. And believe me, it's coming, and if you're paying attention to us and what we're talking about, you're not going to miss it. And that's why we're kind of just living to play another day type of thing, right? Is that when that happens, that's when we're going to go in. That's when a trader can go in big, you know, and minimize risk. That's kind of what we're talking about, and that's something we'll get more and more into, especially with the hedging stuff, especially in the VIX course that we'll have. Like, that's a lot of what it'll talk about, because it's not just VIX. Rejected. That's awesome. Wow. Yeah. So you can see as that ad decline line coming all the way down here now, we're down at 100. That the price action is showing it. I mean, you can just see with the ticks and the breadth. And that's what I'm talking about. Internals, almost leading indicators, right? And the same with bonds and gold. Here, I'll show you what I'm seeing on the other page here. Oh, come on, you stupid thing. So look at this. So before price showed it, VIX is on the increase, gold moving up, 10 years moving up, bonds moving up, all leading before price comes in. And financials are falling apart, so that's not helping at all. I think people get confused with, like, XLF. It's not just that product. That product, I don't even care. That's the ETF for a bunch of huge financials. The reason this matters so much is because the way it is weighted. Just like Apple is extremely weighted hard in the market, Boeing is extremely weighted in the market. It doesn't mean because of the price. That has nothing to do with it, or there'd be a lot of handful of stocks that are mad. It's like Apple matters more literally than like Google and Amazon, even though their price is quadruple. It has nothing to do with the way that it's weighted into the market. And maybe that's something that we'll have to explain a little bit better in detail, but it's just one of those things that just accept it. That's how it is and just move on. But this is why we watch these. These indicators were already showing bullish movement on themselves, which means the divergence to the market is that if these are moving up, the market most likely will be moving down. The market was trying to push up there, and as these were moving up, it's one of those things where, again, 99.999% of the time, if those are doing that, you're going to have price eventually catch up very shortly, which it is now as we're starting to push back down. We are now just barely in the green by 75 cents, so this could turn ugly quick, especially once bulls if they or bears take control. Then it's going to get really ugly, and they're already right into that level. Yep, and there it goes. You guys, it was like what I just said earlier. It's not, we're not seeing these things out of nowhere. This is they are anticipated. Go to the ES chart here. I'm going to read it exactly how it says. 33.55, 57.5. Still major bull bear line. As long as above here, we're still overall bullish. Below here, 44, 33, 22. Below 22, 1303. Below 03, 22, 3280. Then we go all the way down, and he's talking about using from the previous levels. So those are up here. Above 33.22. That's not what the next one. 32.22, 3209, 00, 3188, 3175. Remember, above 32.22, don't get too bearish, means they're trying to save it. So we're right. This is why this level is going to be so important. You can see we just came, literally just knocking on the door of 22. So you guys want to go back and look at this and use that. It means they're saving it for a push to 28.35, 32.42. If it regains 32.44, then more squeeze 55.62. So these keep repeating themselves over and over until they don't, right? So that is the level right here. So we got this as long as lows hold still bullish below 32.33, 32.22 short towards 32.09, 31.80. So this 32.22, if they can't keep this controlled, which they are so far, this is going to break down most likely to 32.09, 31.80. So those could be possible targets if this breaks down. That's why this is so important, and they're controlling it. So up here, if they're not able to break this, and today they weren't able to break this 40, I think it was actually 48, wasn't it? Why is this not showing that right? That can't be right. Why is it showing that? Oh, 47.25. So it's close enough. Yeah, 48. They couldn't break that, so now they're going to try to take control. And as they lose it, this becomes the next point of control. And this is really important right now. If they break this and close below here, this thing could push down. And the internals are showing this to be negative. This thing has a very good chance to break down here and continue to go down. Especially look at add decline, already down negative 290. This is not good to see at all. So as this breaks that, we could be going down, that next target will be 3209, 3180. And if this does, you'll see those exact numbers come up, which it's looking like this is going to be a battle right in here. So that's why this is so important. And these will just continue to repeat over and over and over and over. And I'm not trying to be mean or talk down. You guys don't take it that way, please. We just really want you guys to understand why this happens. And I think not the more times, but the more that you practice these levels, the more it's going to make sense. And again, that's in our Discord under ES levels charting. Darth says starting to get filled on April SPY calls, slowly building a position. So again, what we don't want to see a lot of that we've seen happening is somebody starting a position and just jumping in with 10 calls. That is so much risk unnecessary when every single big trader, every single successful trader, they do what we call stair stepping in. Start with a starter position. Right now it probably should be one contract, then add another one, then add another one. You know, don't just jump in with 5 right away and then take a big huge loss. Start with one, see how it works out. Starts working with your plan, then buy another. And yes, you're going to pay a little bit more, but your price will be averaging just fine. But you jump in with 5 and that thing turns around, and all of a sudden where you would normally have $2 of risk, you've suddenly tripled that because it's 2 times 3, it's 6, right? So that's kind of the simple way of explaining it. Yeah, see, he's been getting really good at this because he's been following it and doing it just every day, and he's starting to be one of the best people at reading these. So honestly, you could follow what he says a lot of times with watching where the bounces happen. That's why he gets really good entries now most of the time. And he's came a long way. He hasn't been doing this as long with options either. He's been trading for a while, but options not as long, but he's been nailing these levels for the last few months because he's really put in the time. I know, guys, it's frustrating. That's what I'm saying. That's what I was just saying is these where we're at in the market right now in this volatility box up here, the upper volatility box. It's frustrating to trade it. It's hard to trade it. But I promise you guys, if you can learn to trade this and be more times green than red, you're going to when this flips out of here, you guys are going to be just absolutely killing it. So just for now, just if you can make it through the day each day and keep showing up for the next day, that is going to make you have no idea. It's gonna be slow, but you're going to be growing more than you realize. Man, look at these. Look at my ticked indicator. It looks crazy. Like just it has no. This is just so just chop. Everything we can look here is just chop. And actually, here I'll pull up the internal gadget. It's crazy. It's just yelling chop. Look at this thing. It's just ridiculous looking. So you don't need to necessarily know what everything means, right? The idea here is that if you just look at this thing, it's just green, red, red, green, 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 red, 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 green, red, green, red, 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 green, green. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. But yeah, when it starts to look like Christmas, you know that we're in shop land. Because I mean, look at this. It's just there's nothing. Things are so what is the word? Symmetrical. There we go, on both sides, and that's not necessarily good. We want it to go one way. Waka waka waka. So again, I've got this area highlighted because we want to be watching this key. We're getting some decent ticks back up here. Breadth is still holding up, so breadth is still okay right now. And you can see that I love this custom script here, and this is something that I absolutely will share with everyone in the group. We'll actually probably end up making most of our students use this just to learn. And if they want to keep it, they can. If not, there's other ways of doing this. But you can see here as it starts to push down on these lines, it'll actually change the color. And right now it is still holding up. So this is we still have more positive volume in the market than we have negative volume. So that's good. Ad decline is starting to flatten out, but this thing needs to get way back up here if this is going to push up anymore. Man, AD SPD is looking nasty. Ouch, who threw that? Oh, why is this thing not updating on my other computer? Oh, come on, get back over there. There we go. There we go. I was wondering why that thing wasn't updating. bouncing right out of our level, guys, right? I'd say 80% of people have no idea, and we've been watching this knowing it's push. I mean, you could be scalping these all day, really, especially once you guys get bigger accounts. You'll be able to scalp these all day. So on that little bit of a fade down, it increased our expected move to $52 by tomorrow's close. Now they're more accurate at the beginning of the week. Like on Sundays, I like to look at the expected moves and then just keep them there. But it is smart to somewhat watch it. Yeah, so the stuff I was talking about this morning, Neo soars on China government deal Bernstein calls a bailout. Well, you know what, Bernstein? No, just kidding. But AMD still in the green, Apple in the green, 0.67, Amazon up 0.73. I'm just reading these off from the other side. I'm just looking over. I'll go back over the market here in a minute. Yeah, it'll be nice. I think it. I don't know when it's gonna happen. I just feel like it will happen. The thing is, though, I think it's good for everyone, especially the brokerages, because they're gonna be making so much more off of all the little commissions, even though they're not making that much off of them. It does add up, obviously, and the more trading, the more they make, right? And I believe it's outdated. It's funny when you try to talk to someone, like any of you, if you called like Thinkorswim or Tastyworks and talk to them about it, they'll try to make it like, oh, it's for your protection. And I just want to be like, how is it in a trader's best interest to be stuck in a bad trade? Explain that to me. Explain that one thing. Well, it keeps you from over trading, or it makes you trade less. And again, like, is that necessarily a good thing? The whole point of being a good trader is being able to cut your losses quick. I don't understand that. So then you're forced to take swing trades that are most of the time, and especially in these market conditions, not that great. I don't get it. And I've had people try to explain it to me, and people that make great, reasoning out of it. I still just, that's like, I don't agree. And I've literally gotten into fights with these guys. I was helping a student just recently, stuck in trade, and I had them three-way call us and Thinkorswim, and I wasn't supposed to say anything. I just wanted, and I was on the other line. I had to step in, and I got kind of pissy with the guy because he was like basically being kind of what's the word? He was being not pushy, but it was like he was like trying to make the trader feel like you don't know any better, and I'm sitting on the other line with him, and I'm just like how dare you, man? Like, it's crazy. And that guy probably doesn't even trade. He works on a phone at TD Ameritrade all day. But again, people like that, it's like you never really know. It's kind of like calling like Guitar Center. You don't really know. Like, are they really that good of a musician just because they work there? Probably not. But I'm preaching. I know. I need to calm down. Oh my God, you guys crack me up. Oh man, this is just absolute chop. The definition of the word. See, it was pushing up there, and then it turned back negative again. So it's just like, man, they really need to keep this volume up here positive, and they really need to get these ad declines moving back up. Look at this, though. This is why I like the script. You can really, it's because if you have just the chick chart, it's just a bunch of lines, right? And it looks kind of weird to me. If you use just the bubbles, I mean, it works okay because you're in the trade. But I like to really see where we've came from, and you can really tell how wacky this is today. I mean, look at that. That is just all over the place. Which is good because then it makes me a little bit more cautious going into my trades, as we go. Nice, good job, Waka. Hey, man, that's the way to go. I used to do that all the time. Is just trade for just like quick little, like I was like, okay, if I can just make $50 a day in an hour, I don't even care. Like, right? And then it would just grow, and then 100, and then 200, and then 500. Like, and it worked. It really did. It kept me really not greedy. It made me take in those profits, but then I had to start to learn to let things run. XLP, which is Staples, is still up here about 0.36. as XLF is still in the green, but price action not looking so hot so far, especially on this 1 hour. Oil kind of coming back down off of that push up this morning. Gold, 10 years and bonds still quite up, higher than I'd like to see those to see a next push up in the market. VIX is now down, what is it, 5.59%. The NASDAQ is still in the green, just under 0.5%, where ES is about 0.25%. Let's move over to check on the FANGs here. So Facebook up 1.1%, Apple up 0.7%, Amazon 0.65%, Netflix 0.77%. So coming off of that high, it hit a high of 375.65. Google just barely up, about $11 or $10 here at 0.7%. Microsoft up still 1.25%, coming off of its high. It did hit 174.84 this morning. So Roku continuing to fade off of that bounce. So you can see there right on the 4 hour, it had resistance on the lower Celt. It was not able to break that, so now it's pushing down. There would have been a good entry there as it pushed up and hit that lower Celt that we were just talking about the last time I was here, so 10 minutes ago, and now it's continuing to fade off. Activision still holding that support on the 30 MA and the lower Celt on the 4 hour, so that's looking okay right now. Shopify still up 1%, but price action not looking so hot. NVIDIA also holding up support on the 30 MA, lower Celt. They're right there together. So good support there. If it breaks that, though, it could get nasty real quick. Tesla is now up only 0.4, and it is holding onto that middle Celt. And man, does it need to hold that, or it could start to really fall apart here. I mean, the high was 944, right? So we're still sitting up very nicely, and it needed to do this. It needed some consolidation. So honestly, as long as it holds this middle Celt, there's no reason it couldn't make a push up again for that next for another big move next week. But it really needs to hold on to this, because if it starts to break down and people are going to start panicking, especially because we've got a lot of new money, young money, if you will, in that trade, I guarantee it. So people will want those profits, and they're going to start to want to bail out. But you got to think how many people bought in way up here. They're a lot, and I guarantee most of them are young and not very wise, and so they're going to panic and they're going to sell as this thing starts to break down. Mark my words. Hopefully the bigger money will come in and keep it up here, but I think once it starts to break down, you're going to see people just jump and ship. Baba actually put, whoa, what the heck? Oh, I unplugged my computer. Whew, I'm lucky I have a fancy little power pack for this thing. I'm really lucky I did, because I just somehow pulled and unplugged that. That was crazy. Where was I at? I was on my China. There we go. Baba's making still nice pushes here at 1.44%. Bidu trailing but up still 0.3%. AMD closing in on that. It's really coming off of that push up here, but it's still up 0.8%. It could turn it around. It really needs to be able to break through that lower Celt, though, or it's going to continue to probably fade the rest of the day. As is Qualcomm, kind of just out in the middle of no man's land here, down 0.12. Disney just barely still in the green, up 0.03, and McDonald's still up 1.26. And as long as McDonald's holds up onto that middle Celt and 14 MA, it can make another push up for that 218, but it's really going to need some help from the market either direction. Because again, McDonald's is one of those tricky ones, being like a staple, being food. It can actually be bullish in a bearish market, but generally, especially lately, it's been riding up with the market. So consumer confidence 130.7, down from January at 131.6. Thanks DT. I get going with this so much, I kind of miss some of that. Yeah, here we go. It just came out 2 minutes ago. Yeah, 130.7 versus 132.0 forecast. What, free shipping? We're about to start soccer season. I just keep getting all these emails because I coach. It's confusing me. Oh, there we go. I see why they sent this. Okay. Anyway. I wanted to see. Yeah, so Home Depot had earnings. I was talking about that this morning. They reported 2.28 per share, beating consensus of 2.10. Revenue and same-store sales were also above. Also, Home Depot announced a 10% dividend increase, which is awesome for Home Depot stock because that's going to bring a lot more long-term players and money over into that. Also, some retail ones that I'm just going through these now that it's kind of slowing down a little bit here. Macy's, ticker symbol M, reported quarterly earnings of $2.12 per share, 16 cents above estimates. Revenue also came in above forecasts. Same-store sales on an owned plus licensed basis fell 0.5%, a smaller drop than the 0.9% that analysts are expecting. So, the reason that these are important to me, these types of earnings, is especially being retail, is important to watch for the overall health of not the market, but of the economy, and especially retail, because that's one of the main, again, one of the main leading indicators of and that's like a midterm to long-term indicator, which is nice. It usually doesn't come in right away. It takes a little bit to build up. MasterCard, ticker symbol MA, we were just talking about this a little bit ago about the CEO. MasterCard announced a leadership transition, naming Chief Product Officer Michael Maybach as CEO effective January 1st, 2021. At that time, current CEO Ajay Banga will become executive chairman. Separately, MasterCard said its current quarterly revenue would drop by 2% to 3% if the coronavirus persists through the quarter. So here, this is exactly what I was talking about yesterday. We're going to start to see more and more of these companies coming out with this stuff. United Airlines, ticker UAL, withdrew its full year 2020 forecast, pointing to the ongoing impact of the coronavirus on travel. The airline also said that near-term demand for travel to China amid the outbreak had virtually disappeared. Wow. And this is exactly what I was saying yesterday. We were going to start to see more and more of these come out, and it's just going to get worse and worse. Tupperware, ticker symbol TUP, the household products maker warned of a shortfall in its full year 2019 earnings, which will not be out today as originally scheduled. Tupperware said it was probing its accounting for results in its Fuller, Mexico unit. This is not good. It also said participating banks have granted relief from a covenant in a $650 million credit agreement, which might have resulted in potential acceleration of required payback. Again, that's Tupperware, ticker symbol TUP. Yeah, so this is what I'm talking about, you guys. We're going to start to see more and more of these, and the more that we see these in staples and retail is not good. That is a forewarning. This is a red siren going off, and this is what we've been talking about. The next thing that I expect to start seeing here soon are going to be banks, and they're going to be using all the excuses they can, but I know, and I've been telling you guys this for weeks, if not months, is that these rate cuts are going to be killing these banks, especially now that we're getting into the point where now it's elapsed enough time from those cuts to where it's going to start to affecting their bottom line, and I guarantee it's going to be one after another, especially the big boys. Mallinckrodt, the drug maker, is finalizing a plan that would put its U.S. generic drug business into bankruptcy. That's like its own deal. Intuit, INTU, reported quarterly profit of $1.16 per share, 14 cents above estimates. The financial software maker also reported better than expected revenue. And Intuit announced the acquisition of credit monitoring service Credit Karma for about $7.1 billion in cash. So that's what I was talking about yesterday. So it's going through. Palo Alto Networks, PANW. I've brought this one up several times. Palo Alto reported quarterly earnings of $1.19 per share, 7 cents above estimates. The cybersecurity company's revenue was well below Wall Street forecasts, however, and Palo Alto issued lower than expected guidance for the current quarter and the full year, citing the impact of sales incentives. Yeah, so these are all looking pretty gnarly. And then the other one I brought up this morning, that there's definitely going to be some possible trades out of, and we'll look at more today, is SHAK, and the ticker is SHAK. Shake Shack reported quarterly profit of 6 cents per share compared to expectations of a 1 cent per share loss. The restaurant chain's revenue missed forecasts, however, and same restaurant sales fell by larger than expected 3.6% during the quarter. Jeez. Yeah, no wonder. Hertz Global, HPQ came in 11 cents ahead of estimates, and then I talked about that with the HP pledged to return a $16 billion to shareholders in a bid to stave off offer of a hostile takeover from Xerox. So it really looks like HP really does not want this to happen with Xerox. I think the problem is that they just don't have the revenue or the guidance that it's not there, and they're going to continue to fall behind, and they're either going to file bankruptcy or they're going to have to do this. And Xerox wants them. I think it's inevitable that Xerox takes over. World Health Organization. Oh, boy, hold on, guys. Oh, great. Here we go. Yeah, Tupperware is going bankrupt. I agree. Okay, the WHO is about to speak again. World Health Organization holds a news conference on coronavirus outbreak. Okay, here we go. This is just starting.
International expert mission, a joint mission with the Chinese government to investigate and look at all the issues around the coronavirus outbreak in China.
This could get crazy, guys. Watch price as this moves.
So introduction, Dr. Bruce Aylward, who led the mission and is fresh off the plane. You wouldn't believe it, but he is. And just a little bit of housekeeping. For the people on the line, if you dialed in, when you ask a question, dial *9. Or if you came in via Zoom, raise your hand. We'll have questions after Dr. Aylward gives a preliminary presentation.
Hold on, guys. I'm going to try to set this up so it can sound better.
Could we get a jug of water, a glass of water, fish? Sorry, I'm getting rather hoarse.
He's got the coronavirus.
Thank you. So, again, really apologies for keeping you all waiting, but I just got off the plane and it's been a rather frantic little bit of time trying to get a few things finalized before I spoke with you. So what I wanted to do today was, as you saw yesterday, I gave a press briefing in China. It was rather long and would have taken you a little time to listen through. I'm not sure everyone saw it, so what I'd like to do is summarize some of the big points a little more quickly than I did yesterday. But if there's specific points people want us to dig into after, I'm happy to do that. But what I thought might be most useful for the press today is if I spoke to three big questions, which are around the issue of, what has China actually done in terms of the response and how have they done it, which is extremely important to where we go next with this, let's say. The second thing I want to talk a little bit about is what the impact of their approach has been, and then finally to some of the implications as we go forward. So I'm going to touch those three big questions. I might spend a little bit of time on each. Just before jumping into that, I think as most of you know, the genesis of the mission, it was a request or a decision actually by the president of China in a meeting with Dr. Tedros with a joint feeling that China had done a huge amount of work and it could inform, let's say, both the global response as well as China's own response to have an independent mission come in and have a review and an assessment of what had been done and lessons for the way forward. So we put the team together, and in the end it constituted 25 people. There were 13 internationals headed by myself, and then there was a team from China. I shouldn't say a team, there was a group from China that were part of the team because it was very much an integrated team. So 12 from the China side. People, maybe I know there's been a lot of interest of who was actually on the team. There was, in addition to myself, from the side of China leading the response was Dr. Yang Wenyan, who anyone involved in the response there will know. He's the head of what's called the expert group in China for the coronavirus response. So he was my counterpart. And then we had, from the international side, I'll just run through, we had Tim Ekman, who's with the Robert Koch Institute in Germany. We had Dale Fisher, from who's actually the chair of the Gorn group right now, and is a professor at the National University of Singapore. We had Chikwe Ihekweza, who many of you will know is the Director General of the Nigerian CDC. Cliff Lane, who's a clinical director at NIH in the U.S. We had Jung-Koo Lee from the Seoul National University College of Medicine, and Dr. Lee, some of you may remember from the MERS outbreak in Seoul. He actually led that response. And then we had Gabriel Leung, of course, the Dean of Medicine from the University of Hong Kong in China. We had two participants from Russia, Alexander Semenov, who's the Deputy Director of the St. Petersburg Pasteur Institute, and Natalia Shenkinyaya, who is the head of the International Department and Infectious Diseases in the National Medical Research Center in Moscow. I'm reading from this to make sure I don't forget anyone, actually. Hitoshi Takahashi from the National Institute of Infectious Disease in Japan. Maria Van Kerkhove, who many of you know, usually sits to the left of Dr. Tedros, I believe, during the briefings that WHO does on the evolving epidemic. And then we have, from the international side, also Weigong Zhu from the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. And if I remember correctly, that was it from the international side. And we'll put the list up of the internationals as well as the national experts from China's side so that everyone has access to those. Maybe just a couple of words about what we did. As you may have seen in the press conference yesterday, we started in Beijing. I was there for a week beforehand, arranging the mission, looking at a lot of the preliminary data, etc. And then the full team arrived on Saturday. We spent Sunday getting ready and then kicked off Sunday evening. And just to give you a sense of how the work is being done in China right now, much of the team and the ministries we needed to work with were very, very engaged, actually, on Sunday. And so the meeting actually kicked off at 7 at night, and we worked till about midnight, and just after midnight with multiple ministries. And we had Wuhan on a video conference for a couple of hours of that as well. And that was quite typical of the working days, quite frankly. So if I ramble a little bit in various directions, folks, it's because of some pretty severe sleep deprivation right now, so apologies for that. So we started there, and then we spent about just a day then in Beijing meeting with some of the national institutions as well as the Beijing municipality to understand how they worked. We looked not only at the national level, the municipality level, but then we were right down to the community level to try and understand how things actually operated in terms of case finding, contact tracing, and also to speak to a lot of physicians, contact tracers, really to get a feel for what was working, what wasn't working, how things had evolved over the last 6 or 7 weeks. From there, the team went in two different directions. One part of the team went to Guangdong province, and then that's a very large industrial province, you may know, just bordering Hong Kong. And then another part of the group went to Sichuan, and then from Sichuan joined the Guangdong group, and then part went to Wuhan, myself included, for a day and a half, just toward the end of the mission prior to the wrap-up and then the press conference in Beijing. So we actually covered a fair amount of territory. In every place, we saw facilities, we saw contact tracing, we even saw markets in a couple of places, we saw the railway stations, the airports, gosh, what didn't we see? Clinics, but we really, it was quite an exhaustive and exhausting schedule. And as I go through this, I really want to pay tribute to the people in all of those places, because we asked hundreds and hundreds of people, probably thousands of questions, and all from the same ones again and again from different directions, to try and triangulate a lot of information to really understand how robust it was. And this is really important in a crisis like this one, because as you'll understand, we're only, when I started there, 6 weeks into this. So they've been moving very, very fast. People were exhausted. Huge amounts of things have been done. Things were changing very, very fast. So trying to accurately build what had happened and what it looked like took a fair amount of time. And I just want to pay tribute to the team, yes, but especially to the people who spent so much time in the middle of this doing it, because they were really shattered and doing and had the important, life-saving work of running a crisis response. I also want to clarify, by the way, just as we kick off, and I'll get into the issues right now, I promise. I'm speaking for the mission here as the team lead for a mission that was independent of WHO. I've actually not briefed Dr. Tedros. He's actually not seen the report. This report is from the team and represents work done by the team together. The last couple of days was our Chinese counterparts, internationals, working very, very closely together in small groups on a lot of different issues to nail a lot of this down. And so the report's just being submitted. I had to do some final edits. That's what took me late now, just being submitted right now. So let me run through those three big issues that I said. So the first was, what did China, what have they actually done? And what they've done is they, as I mentioned in the press conference yesterday, they've approached a brand new virus that's never been seen before that was, as you know, escalating and quite frightening in January. And they have taken very standard, what some people think of as old-fashioned public health tools, very basic public health tools, and applied these with a rigor and innovation of approach on a scale that we've never seen in history. Basically, they have taken case finding, contact tracing, social distancing, movement restriction, and used that approach to try and stop a new emergent respiratory-borne pathogen. And as most of you know, for flu planning, etc., most of your thinking is buying enough time to get your vaccine rolled out to try and reduce morbidity and mortality. And here there was no vaccine, there was no therapeutic, and the Chinese took a very pragmatic approach and decided we are going to go after containment of this virus using that set of tools. And a lot of people in the world, and I have to admit myself included, and certainly a lot of people on the team, would have been very cynical is the wrong word, but maybe concerned as to whether or not you can truly stop that kind of a pathogen, because it runs counter to thinking. A respiratory pathogen, you could actually find the cases, isolate the cases, do the contact tracing, and achieve that kind of an outcome. But what China did was they took a very, as we dug into this, and it took some time to understand it properly, they took a very systematic approach, and there were 5 key things that they did in applying this that were some of them different, but all of them impressive and critical to making it work. So the first thing they did was they took a differentiated approach, because they realized immediately, if you try and do, and when you think of China, people often think about the lockdown in Wuhan, right? Which is a giant city of 15 million people. But that was just in Wuhan. In other parts of the country, the fundamentals were always the same, but then the degree of application was different, and it was tailored to the context, the setting, the intensity of transmission, etc. So the first key thing was this differentiated approach. If there are 0 cases, sporadic cases, clusters of cases, or community transmission like they had in Wuhan, the approach was differentiated. And that was important, because a lot of people say you can't do this at scale because you will exhaust your response. And I've heard that a number of times. People saying, oh, we have to switch to another mitigation approach or whatever because you'll exhaust. But the Chinese pragmatically said, not if you tailor this properly. The second thing that they did was they mobilized a phenomenal collective action and cooperation by the people of China to this response. And the interesting thing is that people have commented on that and say, oh, that's easy in a society or a political system like China. It isn't. It's never easy to get the kind of passion, commitment, interest, and an individual sense of duty that it's our duty to help stop this virus. I mean, we spoke to hundreds of people in hotels, on trains, and planes who are quite outside the system, and they all shared this sense of responsibility, accountability to be part of this. And the most stunning demonstration of it was when we pulled into the train station at night and it was a special train because right now, I mean, it's the saddest thing. In Wuhan, the trains roar right through the station. I mean, continually now for a month. The big inner city trains, they roar right through, the blinds down. And if you're living in the building, surrounding and watching them, and people accept that there. But you know, we're the only train that stopped, so that, you know, 6 of us could get off that train and be part of this. And as I got off, by the way, another group got off, and I said, well, hang on a minute, I thought we were the only people allowed to get off in Wuhan. And this was a group that had these little jackets on and a flag. It was a medical team coming in from Guangdong to be part of the 40,000 healthcare workers from other parts of China that have come in, many of whom volunteered to go into Wuhan and help with the response. But the level of collective action, and the striking part when you pull in, is you pull into the city of skyscrapers and massive boulevards, and this is not a village. This is a city of 15 million people, a modern city. And as you drive into the city, in the dead of night with the lights on, it's a ghost town. But behind every window and every skyscraper, there are people cooperating with this response. And, you know, people have said, yeah, but, you know, there's a big presence forcing them. There isn't. Invisible. It's staggering. And every person you talk to there has a sense that they're mobilized, like in a war against this virus, and they're organized. So that's the second big thing, this collective action. The third big thing is they've repurposed the machinery of government. And I often hear people talk about an all-of-government approach, and I never know what that means. But then when you see and you hear from China, they have repurposed. Transportation does this. They run the trains this way, they manage the roads that way as part of the response, and the toll booths, and the checkpoints, The agriculture does this. The forestry folks do that. But everyone has a role, and it's been repurposed to fit into this machinery. And it works through a prevention and control task force that answers straight to the state council and president to run the whole machinery of government in support. The third thing that was really, or fourth thing, pardon me, was it's a technology, what's the phrase? Turbocharged response. They are using big data and AI in places. I guess people have got a sense. In China, nobody uses money. I can pay for it. I took money out, and it's difficult to pay because everybody pays with WeChat on their phones. They used to pay for everything, and life is lived online, big chunks of it. And from a distance, I hadn't appreciated that. But what they've done is, when it came to the response, they had to manage massive amounts of data, massive numbers of contacts, because remember, they were trying to find every case, trace every contact of 70,000 cases across vast areas and know where they were, follow that up. So you manage all of that data. And then you've got to be able to map that, link it to other sources of data, etc. So that was one piece of it. But the second thing they had to do was, because of the sheer numbers, you had to take whole hospitals and take them out of general service and make them basically response hospitals for COVID-19 cases, which means you've taken major hospitals in a city and you've repurposed them, multiple ones, for this response because there are so many cases. And people would ask then, well, what about all the regular patients? So they kept some designated patient hospitals, obviously, for regular services. They delayed a lot of things like elective surgeries, etc. But then a whole chunk of work, and someone in one place said 50% of their consultations are now done online. They just moved a whole bunch of what was normally done physically online to be able to keep the regular health services going, prescriptions turned over, et cetera, in a very orderly manner. And then the final piece, of course, was just everyday life. You have to feed 15 million people. You've got to keep the food moving, all done through deliveries, all made online, et cetera. I talked to some people and said, well, how does that work? And they said, well, every now and again something missing from a package, but I haven't lost any weight. That's what she actually said to me. One of the people I asked in Wuhan. And then the last piece of this, which was equally impressive, was how science-driven the response is there as well. Because remember, we've known COVID, and it sounds like we've been living this forever, but this is 8 weeks. We're 8 weeks into this, and the science has evolved so fast that China has issued, well, we were there. They issued the 6th set of clinical guidance, how to take care of the cases. And imagine that. I mean, you know how long it takes for WHO to generate a guideline, right? And then to try and get it out and get people using these things, the same in every country. Here they had turned over the national guidelines, how to take care of these severely sick patients, 6 times by 6 weeks. Every single one of the places we went, we asked them how they're managing patients. We're using the 6th guideline. I mean, how is that? It came out yesterday. And so there's this speed of turnover to try and stay on top of the learnings on this. So it's a science-driven, very agile response as well at a phenomenal scale. So what they did, again, it sounds so easy, right? Oh, they did case finding and contact tracing. Well, they did this in an extraordinary way with an extraordinary rigor of application and discipline. And differentiated approach, incredible collective action, repurpose the machinery of government to make it work. Technologically powered and science-driven. And they applied that then to what was an escalating. Remember the exponential growth of the disease that you were seeing in places. And remember, every place it's hitting these days, you're seeing exponential growth again, right? And so, and most people, you keep hearing the debate on TV about, and everywhere, which fascinates me, you know, is this a pandemic or not? Folks, this is a rapidly escalating epidemic in different places that we have got to tackle super fast to prevent a pandemic. I mean, it's actually, what China demonstrates is where this goes is within the control of our decisions to apply this kind of rigor and approach to this disease. And its outbreak. And you saw yesterday, some of you will have seen this, and I brought it along again today. Because we get to the second question then of, okay, great, we understand the approach now, and that took some time to understand it and understand how does it actually work at each level. And that was another big learning. I mentioned it in the differentiation part, but what was interesting as they went through this was that there was a lot of latitude. Like the big rules of the game were in place, but provinces, counties, towns, they could adapt it as they needed to be able to make it work for them. And so as you went from one to another, the fundamentals were always the same. You're tracing contacts, not cats, right? I mean, the fundamentals are the same, but they were adapted to be able to work for that specific area. By the way, someone asked me once and said, okay, we've seen the big cities, but what about the rural areas? What was happening there? And when we were in Sichuan, we looked at that, and this comes back to the technology part, went to the operations center and said, well, how is that working? And so they had teams out there all over the place that were doing the case finding, investigations, contact tracing. But well, that's great, but how do you know how it's working, et cetera? And they have standard indicators to trace all that stuff. But they said, well, we made a decision in Chengdu right at the beginning. The governor explained this to me, that as we rolled out our 5G platform, we were not going to prioritize Chengdu. We were going to use this to make the connectivity with the rural areas work so we could run the COVID response basically in real time. And so when we were in one of these places, we went to the operations center, and they'd had a new cluster, and they had mapped out. So they had one big screen on the wall that had the transmission chains mapped out. And there was a problem with it, and I asked something about that, and they said, we can speak to them. And they pulled up on the other side the operations center in this county. And so we talked to them about what they're finding, the rest, which took a while. And then again, there was a question. So they said, well, hang on a minute. And then they pulled up another screen, and there was the team that was out in the field actually trying to do this. But the whole thing is linked up, and they're in constant contact trying to make sure that together they solve the problems of trying to sort out the transmission. So the question then was, okay, well, what's the impact of this? Because there has been, obviously, this is happening elsewhere, this exponential growth. And as I said yesterday, it's the unanimous assessment of the team that they have changed the course of this outbreak. What was a rapidly escalating outbreak has plateaued and then come down faster than one would have expected if we had looked at the natural dynamics of an outbreak like this. And that's striking. And so what I showed yesterday was this graphic here, which I think is really helpful, because what you can see here, notwithstanding this reporting spike here, but what you're looking at here is what you call is exponential growth, right? Growth rate here at the beginning of this curve going up like that. And if you look at this side, you can see it's actually coming down more slowly, because what happens, what would happen with an exponential growth is you go up and up and up like that, and then you would see a normal distribution, and it would come down like that. That's a normal, you've seen these normal distributions, right? That's what would happen if it runs through a community. But when you start doing all of this, which are the interventions, then you can, ideally try and change the shape of that. And that's what China has actually done. To my surprise, it was one of those things that, when you spend 20, 30 years in this business, it's like, seriously, you're going to try and change that with those tactics? And yes, and it was successful. Or it is being successful, because look where the cases are driven right now. And one of the things we looked at was, okay, well, if that curve will go like that, big question mark, how many cases have been prevented or at least delayed as a result of this action? And, rough back of the envelope, we look at it, it's hundreds of thousands of people in China did not get COVID-19 because of this aggressive response. And any time you pull down the force of infection from the epicenter in an outbreak like that, you are going to reduce the probability of it going elsewhere as well. And that was the other big thing we heard again and again from anyone in China was, it's our responsibility to do this for the world, not just for them. So we heard that quite a number of times. So the question then became, because we heard before getting there, of course, is this real? And one of the comments I made yesterday was, we know the numbers have bounced around as they've gone down. People have asked questions, what's going on today? How come the numbers have gone up, etc. And what we as epidemiologists are interested in is not the exact number on an exact day. We're interested in the trend, and you want to know, is that trend real? Is this going down? Is it stable, or is it going up? Because there were questions about things aren't being shared, etc. And so when we dug into that, we looked at there's multiple different ways you can try and get a sense of where the trend is going. And one thing you can do is you can talk to doctors who are seeing patients who are running these massive hospitals, and everywhere you are hearing the same thing, that we have open beds. And in Wuhan, it was like, we have open beds. We can get people out of, isolation centers into a proper hospital bed. We're able to, the system is opening up because the number of cases are going down. One indication. Another one we looked at was they've established what they call fever clinics. And those are places where if you have a fever, you go and they assess you, and they do a CT scan very quickly. They do to see whether or not you've got the telltale marks of COVID-19 disease, and which is an amazing story itself. But and then at these fever hospitals, then a decision is made. They do the test, whether or not you need the test, and then they do the test, and then whether or not you need to be isolated in a facility, etc. So another thing we looked at, well, how many people are getting tested? Because what's happened is as people have, this mobilization of the community has happened, there's been more and more people who want to be tested, quite frankly. And so they've been going and getting tested. The numbers have been going up and up and up in terms of people getting tested initially. And at one point it peaked at about, I think, 46,000 people were being tested almost daily across the country. Huge numbers. And then it's down, when we looked at it about a week and a half ago, down to 13,000. It was going down like that. And when we went and talked to the people at the fever clinic, they were sitting there not scanning people or not testing people, and they said, this is a change. We had lines, and they aren't there anymore. And that's the second indicator that is real. It's coming down. And then a third indicator, which was interesting, I spoke to, again, I mentioned this yesterday, so sorry to be redundant, a fantastic researcher, a man called Xiao Bin, who is running a remdesivir trial on severe and mild cases in Wuhan. And it's being done in Wuhan, of course, because that's where you have the highest number of cases, you get the fastest enrollment, and we try and get an answer on this interesting drug as quickly as possible. And so when I was talking to him, I said, so how's enrollment going? And he said, it's a challenge. It's slowing down. It has slowed down because there are not enough new patients that we can actually recruit into the trial. So, this all comes back to that question of, is this real? Is what I described to you, this extraordinary mobilization to implement fundamental public health principles and approach in the absence of a vaccine or drugs, in the presence of a respiratory disease, can this bring this down? And it can. And that's the core message, right? We're getting new reports daily of new outbreaks in new areas, and people a sense of, we can't do anything. People arguing, is it a pandemic or not? Well, sorry, why don't you go look at, have you got 100 beds where you can isolate people if you have to? Have you got a wing of a hospital that you're going to close off? Have you got 30 ventilators? Because you're going to have to help keep the severe cases alive for, they'll recover, but they're going to need to be ventilated for 4 or 5 days or a week. Do you have those pieces? Do you know who your 1,000 case, contact tracers are? There's really practical things you can do to be ready to be able to respond to this. And that's where the focus will need to be. So we looked at this and said, okay, the first question I told you about, what was done. The second, what was the impact? And the impact was striking. I showed yesterday another graphic, which might just be useful for people, because in some ways this is more striking than the national one. So what you see here, this is the same as when you just saw. These are the data for all of China, right? So going up fast like that, abrupt plateau, and then this skewing as it goes down, rather than up like that, a bell curve, and down out like this. But then if you look at, and you can see this is Wuhan right here, which is really driving the main shape of that. And these are the other areas of Hubei, and this is China outside of Hubei. And remember, there's a lot more people who live outside of the province of Hubei than live in Hubei. So this is a much smaller curve, number one. The other thing, the shape, it's a very flat curve as well. Part of it's the scale, but this is not the shape of a normal epidemic. And that happens when you do something to try and change it, which is what China has managed to do. And what's striking is how far down they've gotten it. If I remember yesterday, someone told me I've heard so many figures. I think I've heard more figures than there are people in China over the last 2 weeks. But I think one of the figures I heard yesterday was that 0 out of 24 provinces had reported 0 cases for a day. And that's, remember, there were 31 provinces infected only 3 weeks ago. Again, evidence, and all of these are as big as any one of the countries that have been, in the news recently with their outbreaks. And that's a very hopeful thing, which brings us to the third thing that we were looking at is, okay, where do you go next with China? Where do you go next with the this in terms of the global response? And one thing to mention first is that China were not acting from scratch. China had the SARS epidemic, or an outbreak rather, remember, in 2003. And they realized they had to set up surveillance for atypical pneumonias and other surveillance systems, that they needed to be able to do case finding and contact tracing, at a much larger scale, et cetera. So they had time and experience to build a system. But in terms of where they go next in China, and having seen so much of what they've done, it was a little bit humbling to be asked for opinions about, okay, where we go next. And a lot of it was really reinforcing what China is already doing. And the first piece of it is, the vigilance. Cases are down, but they're not zero. There is still a lot of disease in the country that's got to be dealt with. And remember, the people who get sick, they remain in hospital or in an isolation center for anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. So it's a long period of time. So if you have all of these people that got, actually, let's use this one. So if you have all of these people, let's go back a few weeks. So if we go back 2 or 3 weeks, right? So you're back here. You have all of these people that were sick at that time, and you got to add some of the ones who were sick, because that's just who were sick on that day or that week, remember? So then you got to add the ones before. So an awful lot of those people are still in hospital or holding center, an isolation center. So right now, the number, if I remember correctly, yesterday was just over 50,000 people are still recovering from COVID-19 across China. But one of the other things we learned, though, is the spectrum of the disease. There's been a lot of question about, okay, what is really the spectrum of disease that this causes? What's the natural history of it? And we got a lot of information there because of just the sheer numbers now. And as the epidemic or the outbreak goes forward and they start to get control, there's time to analyze a lot of that information more clearly. So now they can generate, and this I take absolutely no credit for, this nice piece of work, but this was done by the Center for Disease Control for the report. And what they've done here is try to help people be able to visualize, well, what proportion are mild or common when they're found, what proportion are severe, and what proportion are critically ill patients. And I think you have a sense now, like the mild cases may just have a fever and a cough, and by the time you get to the common, they usually have a pneumonia and they're a bit sicker, but frankly, they're still mobile and in good shape. The severe are the ones, the simplest way to say it is the next step is they usually have a respiratory insufficiency of some sort, like their oxygen saturation is going down, their breathing rate is going up, etc. And then the criticals usually have, by then, often multi-organ failure. And what we're able to see from this is, okay, what proportion fall into each group? And you can see 80% are mild. And of those, and a really important insight from China is, well, how many of those will go on to severe disease or even death? And you can see from the milds and the commons, very small proportion. This is really mild pneumonia. With severe or larger, and the worst outcomes, of course, in the critical. But now we're getting to the sheer weight of numbers that help us understand that. That's really important because you've got a plan. How many beds might you need? How long are you going to need them for? What are the outcomes going to be like? How many are going to become severe and you're going to need possibly ventilation, etc.? These are really important things to be able to plan that. Also, if you want to plan a clinical trial, you need to understand, well, would they get worse without the drug or not? Would they go forward? So you need this kind of information is so important. And China right now are the only ones who have been able to generate with the kind of numbers to be able to help us understand that. But what it means is they still have 50,000 cases, as we mentioned. The thing is, any new cases now, they generally know where they've come from. They can link them epidemiologically or link them to a contact, and that's when you know, as you heard from a bullet, that's when you know you're getting control of a situation. You're not getting cases from out of the blue and you can't link them back, which is what's sometimes so concerning. So that's the first thing. The second big thing, which is a really important message from China, is every governor we talked to, that most of them, they had an epidemic curve that was going down like that. And what were they doing in response? Building hospital beds, buying ventilators, and being prepared. That's what they were doing. they were saying, okay, look, we just repurposed hospitals that should be giving general care. If these cases go back up again, and that was always what they came back to, we don't know this virus. People are talking about SARS or they're talking about flu. And as soon as we get stuck with that two binary, approaches and ways of thinking, we're not preparing for the novel coronavirus. We're preparing for that or preparing for this. But we're not using all the evidence that we have. And one of their key points they made again and again was, we don't know what's going to happen next in China. We've got it right down like this. We think we can manage, and there will not be another Wuhan. We know how to manage this disease now in all the parts of the country. If it went to zero and disappeared, that'd be great, but that's not what they're planning for. What they're planning for is this could remain for some time, maybe some time until there's a vaccine, so we will have the capacity to be able to manage it and run society and economy and everything else the way we need to, and not lock people down to try and manage this. That's the second big thing they're doing. It's a good message for the world, right? How many countries are planning hospital beds, planning ventilators, planning O2 supplies, and the lab capacity to be able to manage this? And then the third thing that we said and asked of China, at this point, the world needs the experience of China. China has dealt with the most disease in the world. 31 provinces have managed this. Everyone we spoke to, they knew what they were doing, and they've clinically managed huge numbers of cases now. One of the points you heard me mention yesterday is countries are building barriers between themselves and China, and new barriers are going up in the last days at a time when the cases and the risk from China are going down, and you need access to that expertise that much more. You also need China, and it's getting its productivity going. As you've heard, they're doing a phased restart of everything. So they're getting the factories going. Then eventually they'll get the schools going, and then but they're taking a phased approach to try and manage the startup now as they go forward. So for China, there were a number of suggestions about how to move forward, and a lot of it was reinforcing some things that were already happening. But then for the rest of the world, those were the bigger things that you heard me speak about yesterday, perhaps. But the first thing in the response is there has to be a shift in mindsets. Again, around the world, people are thinking, oh gosh, how do we live with this and manage all this disaster, et cetera, instead of, gosh, this virus is going to come. It's going to show up in our country. We're going to find it within the first week. We're going to find every case. We're going to go after every contact. We are going to make sure that we can isolate them and keep these people alive so they survive the case. This is the way we've got to be thinking. It takes a real shift in mindset. And it's not a preparedness mindset, which usually thinks about how you prepare for eventual disasters. This is going to come soon. Potentially. You've got to be shifting to a readiness, rapid response thinking. And in China, one of the interesting things was not only did they designate a whole hospital, and these are big modern facilities, hundreds of beds, as, okay, that one's going to manage it. When you go out and think, okay, how do you actually do that in practice? How do you keep it safe? So you go to a ward, if you go to Hoog here or to La Tour, I'm sure most of you have unfortunately had to visit one of those places. You've got your old wards, right, with some doors at the beginning of the ward. Well, what China's done, rather than have some beds that are isolation beds, is at the start of that ward, they built a wall with a window on it. They sealed the whole thing and said the whole ward, all that whole 40 beds, 100 beds, is now an isolation unit. And just everything at scale, very, very fast. They've taken a stadium, which I saw. They put 1,000 beds up, 72 hours. You've seen these hospitals being built over a week. But they went from, they would convert a training center or a stadium in between 24 and 72 hours. That was the time frame they took in Wuhan to increase by 1,000 their capacity. And it was such a disciplined approach to put that in place. But again, a good lesson. It's okay, we're going to try and not have Wuhans, deal with Wuhans, obviously, but you may have to deal with sporadic cases, definitely. We're seeing that in many places. They get sporadic cases. We're also seeing clusters of cases. And as soon as you start seeing that in places, you have to be ready to manage this at a larger scale. You have to be ready, in your mind, to stop the transmission change. You have to be thinking that way. And so there has to be the mindset shift, number one, and there's got to be the readiness planning and capacity building, and it has to be done fast. So yesterday when I said, second big conclusion for the world is it's simply not ready. But it can get ready very fast. But the big shift has got to be in the mindset about how we're gonna manage the disease. The third big thing, the rest of the world, and probably this is the first one, is you've got to get your population ready and bring your population with you. And your populations, they should be washing their hands now. They should be proper, hygiene now. Those things that we should be doing anyway should be at scale in countries because they really good at it, and they're really keen to help, even though they are still working in their own areas. And this was another message that you heard all the time in China. It was a fantastic story of the human side. It was always about the people and the individuals. Everywhere you went, from anyone you spoke to. And there was a sense of responsibility and sense of collective action and this war footing to get things done. But the other thing that was striking was the solidarity between provinces. Because remember, every province in China has been hit by an unknown pathogen that started to do this in the province. Their response was to get on top of the known provinces, but to send medical teams, PPE, everything into Wuhan. When I met with the governors, they said, "Yeah, we just sent 2,000 people into Wuhan and to work." And you wonder, how does that even work, right? So you go to the stadium and say, "Well, how does that work?" And one of the physicians says, "Well, I'm from Henan or Guangdong or wherever it was," and he says, "We run that that one I told you that was boarded off. We run that one. They just bring a whole team and run the whole thing. And they bring all their own PPE, all their own equipment. They pull it out of that province." And remember, what we're seeing in the rest of the world is, we better build up our stocks and keep it over here. We better keep this here. We better keep our, whatever. But there's this sense of you get the resources where they're needed. It's in our common interest to get this down. And you saw all the provinces operating that way. It was really fascinating. So those are the big findings. What China did, the real impact that it had, the implications are you can actually affect the course of this disease. You can change the shape of this, but it takes a very aggressive and tough program. It was a striking thing to see. In 30 years of doing this business, I've not seen this before, and nor was I sure it would work. So we saw a bunch of other things as well. As I mentioned, there were a number of technical things that we learned about disease severity, the natural history of the disease, how it's transmitted, by the way, even some of the work being done on the animal origin, very interesting. But then also operationally, how do you run a response like that, right? So talking that through with top leaders, how do you set up a stadium in 72 hours and then walk through? You do 1, 2, 3, 4. That makes sense. And then how you run these kind of containment measures at this scale. So a lot of really good learnings that will inform other parts of what we're trying to do with this response. I would say, let me make one point because I know there'll be questions, and I'll stay as long as we need to try and help with any of those. But one of the big questions that we keep hearing about, and you will have heard, is about, how much transmission is going on in communities, right? And you keep hearing the tip of the iceberg, and we can't see this thing, and, millions of people infected and all this kind of stuff. So we tried to look at those kind of questions as well. And we, again, you're at war here, and there's a huge fog in any war. And you're trying to find those little bits of information that can add up and give you some confidence in what you're saying. So we tried to look at where was there sampling of people in the population that might give us a sense of how widely this virus was spreading. And again, this is where it's great to look at these things in China because the numbers are so big. But you've probably heard there's something called an influenza-like illness surveillance system that runs around the world with many sentinel sites that collect like 20 samples every month and get them analyzed, etc. But this happens in multiple places of China. And what you can do is look at the data, and they can show you, here are our data, our sampling, here's all the flu cases that were coming up. And in November, December of last year, they all went back to look. Nobody, because then once we had a COVID-19 test, they went back to test all of these. Nobody found it. It wasn't there. They found lots of flu. But then in January, they did find it. It comes up in January, the first couple of weeks of January. But outside of Hubei, very rare. One might be positive here or one there. It wasn't like all these samples were positive. Like there was a lot of it circulating. And then another thing we did is in places that were heavily infected, more and more people were coming to fever clinics. They wanted to get tested, etc. And in one place, in Guangdong, they had tested 320,000 samples for the COVID virus. 320,000, right? It's going to give you some sense of what's going on. And when they started the sampling of those, about 0.49, I think it was, percent of them were positive, so less than 0.5%. And in the recent period, it's something like 0.02%. So I know everybody's been out there saying, whoa, all of this thing is spreading everywhere and we just can't see a tip of the iceberg. But the data that we do have don't support that. What it supports is, sure, there may be a few asymptomatic cases, and that probably is a real issue, but there's not huge transmission beyond what you can actually see clinically. And that's really important, right? If you're in a war, you will need to be able to see your enemy to know what you're dealing with. Now, another important development in China, just while we were there, was they just licensed a couple of seroassays that will let them test antibodies in a whole bunch of people to try and get a sense of if they have antibodies but they weren't sick, the virus was circulating. So, maybe I'll be sitting here next week and saying, guess what? Those data didn't tell us the story, these ones do. But that sero survey should help us understand that. And that'll be important. For example, you want to reopen your schools. You know that kids have not gotten very sick, or very few have. Have a lot of them been infected? Are they part of the driver of this outbreak? It doesn't look like it. It looks like the main driver is not widespread community infection. It looks like it's household-level infection. That may be part of the reason that China's strategy, find a case, because the close contacts are families, and people usually know them, and you're going to be able to find them and be more successful. And remember, you don't have to find every single one, because you never will. You want to find enough to break the big...
I'm getting all the garbages right now.
This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service.
Ah!
This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service. This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service.
And remember, you don't have to find every single one, because you never will. You want to find enough to break the transmission. So that's why we went. What we saw was being done, the impact that we believe it had, and how we think it can inform the global response. I want to highlight again, I am not speaking for WHO, because someone may be going, what? But that's what the evidence says. And when you're in a war like this is we had a big debate with some of our Chinese colleagues about, is this a dangerous virus? Is this a serious virus? Is this whatever? The bottom line is this virus kills people. You've seen that. And it kills vulnerable people. It kills our elderly. And, what we think of as society is how we care for the vulnerable in our populations, not just, and I hear people say, oh, yeah, but the young survive, all's good. Seriously. And it is, and that's not always the case either. Young people do die of this disease, as you've seen as well, and they die in industrialized countries. And I think people were also looking sometimes at this and saying, oh, but in China, they don't have this, they don't have that, etc. If I had COVID-19, I want to be treated in China. We go into these hospitals, and how many ventilators do you have? 50, 60. I mean, just a scale we're not used to thinking on in the West. And then you'd ask, how many ECMO systems do you have? And I was like, seriously, you're going to ask about ECMO? There's extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, and it's when the lungs simply, even if you ventilate, aren't going to get enough oxygen. And police would say 5. And I remember being with Tim from the Robert Koch Institute, like 5 in one hospital, we don't have that in Europe, and we're using 3 of them to. And we were like, well, do people come out? And yeah. So when we look at how dangerous this disease is as well, I think we have to be careful looking at the China data, because China know how to keep people alive from COVID. They're super committed to it, and they're making a massive investment in it as well. That's not going to be the case everywhere in the world. And as you've seen, we've had tragically lost people in, G7 countries are dying of this disease. And so it is a serious disease. And I worry sometimes if we look at the China numbers, people are going to get a false sense of security. But these people know and they care about keeping these people alive. And they do it successfully. They're really good at it. So, folks, that's what we saw, what we heard, what we think can help inform the global response. It's never black and white, but sometimes we'll present our reportings a little bit more black and white in hopes that it'll drive the discussion about where we go next with the global response. So, Margaret, no one looks interested, so
they look
call it a
hugely
day.
interested. Look, they're all raring to go.
Bernard, I think lots of you guys know Bernard Schwartlander, the chef de cabinet here, and he said, let's try and add up how many hours you slept in the last 14 days, and I don't know, it barely gets into the double digits. So, again, sorry to run on so long, but we saw a lot, and it's a complicated story, so I wanted to make sure you heard it before I hear what would be helpful to clarify.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aylward. I'd like to be treated in China too. So just to remind everybody, those of you online, if you want to ask a question, dial *9, or if you're using Zoom, put your hand up on the icon on the screen on your right. We'll start with questions from the room.
Well, she's trying to choose who she's going to take from a question from. I also want to thank those of you who tried to contact me. I saw Jamie's hand went up first, because people phoned me and called me in China and the rest. And those of you who know me running many crises, I try to be extremely available to the press because I just think you're so important to managing any crises. It's in my interest. And in this occasion, we went to a complete, blackout because we really had to focus on this. We were trying to inform a global response at a dangerous escalating disease. And, people might call and say, well, this happened there or that happened there. It gets you off track. We just had to focus on what we were doing. So thanks for the patience for those of you who are frustrated by that.
Okay, I'm going to be very geometric. We've got 4 microphones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll take a question over here from the correspondent from CGTN. Pardon. Terrible.
Thank you. Shane from China Central Television, CCTV. I have a question that is about, you mentioned China has been successful in containing the virus and the disease is being,
It's showing success. Let's not put the cart they're not putting the cart before the horse. If they said I said they contained the disease, they'd have a fit because
Thanks for being precise and careful.
Sorry.
So my question is, you suggest that there are many things other countries can learn from China. However, do you think there will be some difficulty for them to accept, to adopt all these measures? Why are there such difficulties for them? Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in on the questions. It's a little bit like I said, right? this is a respiratory-borne pathogen, and when we think about things like flu and the rest, we think, okay, we need a vaccine to manage that because you can't get ahead of the transmission of it. So part of it's a mindset shift that, gosh, this can actually slow this thing down. And frankly, I think the mindset shift is the hardest part. It's really hard work too, right? Kind of easy to stick a vaccine in someone's arm. Really hard to find every single case. And you got to find them super fast and find every contact, get them isolated. So there's going to be a range of challenges. One is going to be that mindset shift. The second is the communities and populations coming with it, because to accept quarantine, where it's needed, to accept the rapid isolation, et cetera, these are going to be challenges for people as well. And materially, right? Are we ready to isolate that number of people, to support that number of people, et cetera? So there's a combination of mindset issues, I think community engagement issues, and just material issues. But we've got to overcome them. It's as simple as that.
And you think it's necessary because right now this seems to be the only way, right? Except for the public measures.
It's a good way. Works.
And for the others, medicines or vaccines, we don't have that. So this might be the China's.
So let me say a word about that. With Ebola, we have a vaccine, right? But it's not going to replace case finding, contact tracing. I don't know what the vaccine for this might look like. We have SARS, we have MERS, we don't have vaccines out. We've got great candidates, but they're not out there working. They're coronaviruses, right? And remember, there's 6 human coronaviruses right now. There's those 2, and then there's the 4 that cause common colds and things like you've heard about. We're not great at coronavirus vaccines. I mean, the whole world of people in the world of coronavirus vaccine are going to slaughter me because they're going to say we are great. We're just not using them. But we don't have the experience we do with flu and with other diseases. So and China's very pragmatic. Don't know if we're going to get it. We're going to work on it, but we're going to move this way. That's what you heard again and again. So sorry. Let's keep moving. Yeah.
Okay. Another question from. Okay, Stephanie.
Yes, first.
It's been 2 years. I can't remember which agency. I'm sorry, Sarah.
Reuters.
Right.
Thanks. I wondered if I could draw you, please, on infections among healthcare workers.
Sure.
What you're seeing in hospitals. You were in 3 provinces. Do they have 2 parts? Do they have enough equipment? And the training? And then secondly, are you seeing transmission still in healthcare settings? There was a peak.
Okay, guys, I have to get on with the student and then go over a couple of things. They're going to continue to answer some of these questions. Basically, continue to watch those levels that Darth just posted. I'll be here to still help, obviously. I'm mobile. I do need to switch platforms. So I'm going to I'll cut the stream, but I will still be available on here. You guys, honestly, just watch the levels. Listen to HEG and Darth as much as possible. Watch for a bounce here, but I don't think this is over by a long shot. Like we just said yesterday, I was surprised that we pushed up as much as we did last night. So yeah, be careful. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys here shortly. I'll still be on, you guys. I have to help him. He's panicking, and he's actually doing well, and I'll explain this tomorrow because this is something I want you guys to know. Is that sometimes when the volatility increases, you can still make money on both sides, but you need to know how to roll some things, and it's confusing when he's using calendar spreads and back ratios, and I'll explain all of that. It's a little bit complicated, but yeah, other than that, yeah, just follow the levels, guys, and yeah, we'll go from there. Thanks.